Hey everyone, and welcome back to Gotcha Interact. In today's video, we're going to be looking at Yansan and kind of going over her initial kit, what this looks like in the first kind of version of the initial beta. And as we do see future changes, we may cover that, we may not, but we'll kind of keep you guys updated on that. But let's kind of dive right in looking at Yansan and what she actually has to bring to the table. So jumping right in, looking at her skills here, her normal attack doesn't really have anything special attached to it, but getting right into her skill, Yansan's going to charge forward a certain distance, dealing nightsoul aligned electro damage to all opponents in her path. Within 5 seconds after this is done, using a normal attack will trigger one quick swift stormflight stomp from Yansan that will not consume stamina. After the skill is used, Yansan will regain Night Soul points up to her maximum and then enter her Night Soul's Blessing state. And within her Night Soul's Blessing state, she's going to continuously consume Night Soul points. And if she does run out or uses the skill again, her Night Soul Blessing state will end. It has the following properties. It will increase Yansan's movement speed and jumping power. Holding sprint will switch Yansan to Thunderbolt Rush mode, greatly increasing her movement speed and jumping power temporarily. In this mode, Yansan can make flying leaps using terrain or consume additional Night Soul points to move on water or liquid phlogiston while being immune to damage from the latter.
Also keep in mind that while you're in that Night Soul Blessing state, under the normal attack talent, it states that while in the Night Soul Blessing state, Yansan's charge attack will be transformed into the formidable Swift Storm Flight, consuming a certain amount of stamina to stomp fiercely down, dealing Night Soul aligned damage. And so that is also going to keep in mind to level into that normal attack talent if you do get her, to think about that as well, because that specific, the properties there to increase that damage are going to be there. Now, looking at her burst, it's called the Three Principles of Power. Ianson's Stomping Foot shatters the very earth with power, dealing Night Soul aligned AoE electro damage. She then whips out her limited edition kinetic energy scale for workouts. When this skill is used, Yansan will gain 15 Night Soul points and enter the Night Soul Blessing state. When the kinetic energy scale leaves the field, Yansan's Night Soul Blessing state will end. Looking at the kinetic energy scale, it states that the energy kinetic scale will follow the character around, boosting the attack of your current active party member in different ways based on Yansan's Night Soul points. If Yansan has less than 42 Night Soul points, the attack bonus will be based on her Night Soul points and her attack. If Yansan has at least 42 Night Soul points, the attack bonus will be based on her attack. Additionally, the scale will log the distance on your current active character, excluding Yansan, who has moved so long as it is active, restoring Night Soul points to Yansan every second based on the distance moved in the previous second. The scale will disappear once her Night Soul Blessing state ends, and it will disappear 1 second after you cease being in a state of combat. While it is active, Yansan's Night Soul Blessing state will not end even if she is not on the field. So a lot of interesting things there, especially having that duration basically constantly being upkept. Have you or a loved one been a victim to the losing to Chi-Chi syndrome? If so, you are qualified for benefits from today's sponsor, Lootbar. Lootbar is an online top-up platform that allows you to purchase Genesis crystals for a cheaper price than you see in-game. The main reason Lootbar is safe to use is because they only need your UID and what server you play on. This way, those emails and passwords are completely safe. If you do happen to have any possible issues, Lootbar is 24/7 live chat support that you can use to fix any problems you may have. Lootbar also supports plenty of other games and in-game currencies besides just Genshin Impact, so go ahead and check out those other games that Lootbar supports. Your delivery is guaranteed within 30 minutes of purchase, and usually we've seen it within a couple of minutes, sometimes even 30 seconds. There are plenty of other creators that have and still do endorse Lootbar, including ourselves, so if you need some extra credibility, here you go. But do you need to see a little bit more than a few sponsored ads? Go ahead and check out the almost 30,000 reviews that Lootbar has on their site. So what are you waiting for today? Go ahead and check the links in the description or the pinned comment to check out Lootbar today and start saving. Thank you again for Lootbar for sponsoring this video, and now back to the video. But besides the base kit, I mean, we're seeing some really cool, interesting things here, Rift. Besides the base kit, looking at the skills, the normal attack, and the burst, what about some of those passives that we see, especially with those Natlan characters?
Looking at her first passive, it's called Enhanced Resistance Training. After Swift Stormflight hits opponents, Yansan will gain the Precise Movement effect for 15 seconds. During this time, her attack is increased by 20%, and whenever she regains Night Soul points through the kinetic energy scale in her burst, the Three Principles of Power, she will gain 1 extra Night Soul point. Additionally, when your current active party member consumes or restores Night Soul points, the extra Night Soul points she gains the next time she restores Night Soul points through her scale will be increased to 4. This effect can occur once every 2.8 seconds, and also Precise Movement will expire when Yansan's Night Soul Blessing state also expires.
Beyond that, we have the kinetic energy gradient test, and when a nearby party member triggers a Night Soul burst, Yansan will obtain the warming up effect for 10 seconds. During this time, when Yansan restores at least one Night Soul point, she will also heal your active character for 60% of her attack, and this effect can be triggered once every 2.8 seconds. So, a very similar character probably to almost a Natlan version of what we see in like Bennett, an Electro character, but also a really cool ability to have some mobility to move around. An interesting thing with the whole running around thing. So the more your character moves,
Mm-hmm.
on site character. I don't know why I can't say that. The current active character. There we go. If I could speak correctly. That yeah. Once you have that, then it seems like at that point, the more you have of that, the more Night Soul points you get back, which is increasing that as well. Never mind the attack buff and the healing. We're seeing some very interesting similar things to Bennett, but also almost like a Natlan feel to it. So I don't know. What are you thinking? I know you are the 4-star king between us two. So what are you excited for, at least with her?
Well, obviously, most of us, you guys watching as well, are thinking about Varisa, the new character. We already did talk about her in a previous video. If you want, you can check that out. And obviously, with being a more plunge-focused character, we're even getting the new artifact set to help that. It's going to be her personal set, most likely. And Yansan's probably going to directly be one of maybe Varisa's best teammates. And with Varisa also being Electro, we have Electro Resonance there. Lots of good things going, increasing your character's base attack. Yansan might have also some pretty good damage. You never know. I mean, her skill multiplier looks really good at talent level 10. It's like 500 and something percent. So maybe that's promising. Another question would be, is she good in a Dendro team just because of spread and aggravate type stuff? Could you use that there? And I don't see why not. An attack buff can still be helpful to characters like Sino and Alhaitham. Yeah, they like the EM more, but it's just food for thought, I guess. And I like to play around with different things. So I'll probably have fun trying stuff out like that as well for maybe some aggravate type teams. But obviously, the biggest things in her kit is going to be the fact that she is giving an attack buff. Also, that second passive you read not too long ago, being able to heal. I didn't see that coming because I'm just, for you guys context, I'm looking at this fresh. I haven't even like looked at this stuff before we recorded. I just think that's so cool that she has a heal and 60% of her attack, and then it also can happen every 2.8 seconds. That seems pretty valuable. And so even without that, I was already liking her kit, but now that that's also in there, just extra value. You don't have to really think about, oh, I need to make sure I have a sustain in my team or a shielder, a healer, whatever. If you're good with your dodges and stuff, Yansan may only, she may just be all you need as far as healing and restoring or whatever. If you're using a team that involves Farina somewhere else, maybe like an Electrocharge team, Farina, Ororon, something like that, your main character, or your main carry, and then maybe Iansam for an attack buff, play around with different things. You might want a better healer than Yansan just to counter Farina, but that actually team already sounds pretty good as well. I think there's just a lot of different things you can do. I do like that Yansan's kit's not that restrictive. I guess arguably the first restrictive thing would be the fact that it's an attack buff. So she's not going to help characters like Nevalette, Mualani, your HP scalers, and maybe other characters that just don't work off of attack very well. So that's kind of just a lot of my initial thoughts. I'm kind of curious on your end, though, Vixen. What are some of your specific ideas for Yansan?
Well, you know me, I'm always initially hyped and excited, but at the same time, there's always the lingering in my mind of, okay, let's look at it in reality. And when we look at this, you start to look at, okay, you have a character that's similar to Bennett, and so in my immediate mind, I'm immediately weighing the two in my mind. Now, Bennett's heals go for, if you can get a high base attack and whatnot, you can get you can get a pretty good attack increase. At the same time, with the heals that he can do with his HP, I think that that's another thing to keep in mind as well. So having those two things in my mind, that's where I'm starting to go for. If you look at 60% of her attack, you're looking at something like every 2.8 seconds, right? Because this can only happen every 2.8 seconds. It states that when a nearby party member triggers a Night Soul burst, that's another thing to keep in mind. It has to be a Night Soul burst being triggered, so you're going to have a lot of Natline characters in the team. So the healing really isn't that consistent. It's not like a Bennett burst where it's happening all the time. At the same time, you don't have to worry about a burst happening all the time, so you're not waiting for that heal to happen based on that time frame. You're just basically waiting for it to be triggered every 3 seconds, because it can happen pretty consistently compared to, just how normal things are going. But besides that, that's the first thing, is that the heals are probably going to be
Mm-hmm.
very, very different. More elongated rather than quick, and, the 7 or 8k that you normally might see with a Bennett, and the consistent on heals as well.
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, I'm next thinking the attack buff. The attack buff looks great, but the maximum attack bonus, if you look at her talent, if you get it to level 10, so we're not looking at any constellations, level 10, it says the max attacks bonus is 690. So it still is a good amount of a buff to attack. I don't want to say that it's absolutely garbage, but compared to Bennett's, where I think it's like, I think 100 something percent, 110, 111% of his base attack. So if he can get to 7 to 800 base attack, you're increasing that. You can get a solid buff through his attack, or whatever his base attack is. You can get a pretty substantial buff. So his healing and his attack already seem stronger. Never mind that he's an attack character, or a pyro character, so that him already kind of being better at the attack buff kind of makes sense in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my initial thought, is I'm excited. At the same time, I'm not expecting the world of her. I'm going to keep my expectations in a good way, which I think is a good way to do these things, especially when we look at kits and everything, because things will change. Kits change over the different versions. She might get better, she might get worse, so it's always good to just keep in mind, okay, in reality, what does this actually look like for each character?
Yeah, no, I think I would totally agree with you. Also, like, kind of like I guess I mentioned earlier, the skill and the burst damage scalings, if we're thinking a little bit more selfish about Yansan, seeming to have a little bit of damage potential. Her swift stomp with that charge attack that, you can do with the skill to not consume stamina, or you can do it anyways. So she kind of seems like she has a little bit of damage, maybe making her a little bit quick swappy, whereas Bennett usually doesn't have, if you're building a typical Bennett, you don't go into damage at all. Now, Bennett just has really good scalings, and sometimes you'll pop out an 80k burst hit for no reason. You're like, what? You're built on HP and ER. Why are you doing this? But Yansan might have a little bit more damage in her specific slot while giving less of a buff. So it's just kind of mitigating, where am I actually throwing damage? Am I throwing it to my main carry, or my other maybe sub DPSs, or am I using it for myself? Which I feel like Yansan's a little bit more like that. Actually, another character like that comes to mind that we've had for a long time is Kujo Sara. Kujo Sara has an attack buff, kind of like Bennett. It's not as powerful as Bennett's, but also Kujo Sara has damage potential. So it kind of makes me triangulate these three characters together in a weird kind of way, where they all give attack bonuses, and a hefty amount of it. Thing is, with Yansan, if you do look at the little different multipliers for her burst, she actually does have a cap on the max attack bonus that she can give. So, you have a stopping point, and with a crowned burst, that looks to be right now at least 690 attack. That's the most you're going to get out of a fully built Yansan if you're overcapping. Whereas Bennett, we all know, is even without Aquila or Mist Splitter, the highest base attack that you would preferably want to go for, even with a 4-star option, I think Bennett still gives slightly more attack than that. I know with my Bennett, because I have Aquila, I'm giving something like 865 attack, because his base attack is 865 or something like that. And if you have the Burst Crown, it's like 106%, if I remember off the top of my head, of his base attack. So something like 800 to 900, right? Yansan caps at just under 700, at least for right now. So it's still more. So this is more akin to probably feeling about as powerful as a Kujo Sara attack buff, minus that 60% crit damage if you have C6 of Kujo Sara. So maybe that's what you can kind of balance it between, at least for right now, is kind of my thought, while also having damage. She is a Natlan character, so that makes certain teams, for Natlan specific teams, have some synergy, like some Mawika teams, using Night Soul points helps Mawika. Maybe there's going to be a cool, I know people tried to do Overload with Mawika, and it's not bad, but sometimes people talk about Ororon not getting his full kind of usage out of that. I still think you can use Ororon and Mawika together in a Chevrolet Overload team. I don't see why not. Because Mawika is just simply powerful enough. But, you could take out Ororon in that Overload specific team and slot in Iansam, give some more attack to your characters. And honestly, if we get into artifact sets at this point, I think Ianson's pretty obvious with the artifact set. You probably just want to go scroll. If she has really good damage, and maybe with that plunge she does in that charge, I don't even know if that's considered a plunge or not. It's just based on the wording with the fiercely stomping down, kind of make me think, oh, is it plunge attack, or is it? We'll figure that out later. But maybe she can have some damage. She could use the Varisa set. but I don't know. The Risa set doesn't really help her skill and burst damage, which seem to have good scalings. Kind of just rambling here with different thoughts as they come into my head here, but I guess you can kind of see where I'm going with this in saying that I don't think Yansan has to be tied down to just thinking about Risa. I think she has a flexible kit, and you can kind of play around with that, have a sandbox with that, and just try different things.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting uses to put her outside of maybe where she's specifically supposed to be put. But in my mind, I'm actually going to go on the opposite side. I do think that she kind of just not only fits in that team, because yes, she does have plenty of opportunities to go outside. But for me, honestly, I think it's going to be difficult to force her somewhere else. I think my other thought was the Malwika Overload team. I'm super happy that we don't have to use Auron anymore, and we can actually use a different character who has some better damage scalings and whatnot. That might be a little bit better for specifically this. I think Auron's a great character. I think I just like him more in those Electro Charge teams. And that might be a bad take, but that is my take. And so I think that overall, with that, it is going to be more interesting to see how now we have a character like Yansan to actually make this work. How far does she actually go with what she needs to be doing for the team? Once again, that attack buff, you have the double pyro already in the team. The overload teams I think are going to be really, really fun. Never mind doing that with Varisa as well. So lots of cool, interesting things I think we are here to see. We're just going to have to see once again as we get to more testing, as there's more things coming out in different versions, we'll be able to see a little bit more with her. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that is definitely going to come from her, and hopefully we'll see some, extra interesting teams whenever she actually releases. Well, that's everything we've got talking about Yansan in this specific video. If you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Also, check out any of the other content that we have on the channel. Also, even check out our Discord as well. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.